as you will have seen when you registered, this session is about driving action in gifts in Wales. So we do know there's a challenge there, don't we? I think as a sector as a whole. I'm sure you've seen lots of statistics that say, depending who you look at, 35 to 40% of people say, yeah, this is something that I could do or I would do. And yet we know that only just over 6% of people ultimately actually leave a gift. I am a relentless optimist, and I actually think that's an opportunity for us. I think there's a really big opportunity there to convert more of those people that say, absolutely, this is something I could think about into people who actually go and take action. Before I kind of dive into the meat of it, though, I probably should introduce myself, shouldn't I? Because I just started to get all excited about the topic and didn't actually say who I am. So I'm Clare Routley. I am Director of Consultancy at Legacy Futures Group. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I am a massive legacy nerd. So as well as working with lots of charities, which is wonderful, I do keep a bit of a finger in the academic pie. So I did a PhD, over a decade ago now, looking at why people leave gifts in Wales. But alongside my work with charities, I've continued to try and study and publish and write and really, I suppose, um, bring in insights and data from the academic world that would be, I think, particularly useful for us working in legacy fundraising. So a little bit of this presentation is really a bit of that, I would say. It's really looking at, well, what can we learn about what it is that actually drives people to take action, and how can we apply some of those insights into Gifts in Wales legacy fundraising. So, with no further ado, let me get to the meaty stuff. I will work through that little build here, and just say this is looking at sort of not research into legacy specifically, but more generally looking at research into what academics like to call the intention behaviour gap. So I think very often we, as humans, we tend to see it, we tend to imagine ourselves, don't we, as these very rational actors. And if anyone asks me, how do I go about taking an action, I would say to them, I decide what I'm going to do, and then I go off and I take my action, and it seems really sort of straightforward. But actually, what the research says is not so much. So is that if you look at what actually accounts for how people behave across, multiple academic studies, that intention to act is actually only accounting for about a third of what people actually go on and do. And somewhat terrifyingly, another study shows that 47%, 47%, if I could say it, of people intend to take an action. They've made that decision, but they don't do it. So only, just over half of us, once we've kind of made a decision, actually go and take some action on it. And this is where I feel seen. 15 to 20% of us are chronic procrastinators. So I don't know about you, but when I have a big project or something important I need to do, my grout in my tiles in my bathroom is never so clean. Isn't it really? It's so easy, isn't it, to put things off, to try and find something that feels at the time like it might be quite an important thing to do. So, there's lots of evidence, not just from our world, but from the research in general that suggests that taking or making the intention to do something is definitely not the same as someone actually taking action. But I'm sure as legacy fundraisers, you all know that. But I thought this is quite a nice way of thinking about it, again, from a study that looks, more generally at the process of taking action. And as it says on the slide, I think it shows us that actually that making our minds up is just the start. And especially, I think, in the world of writing wills, putting gifts to charities into our wills, because it's not really a spur of the moment thing, is it? Okay, I might see an advert on the TV, talking about a disaster, and I decide to give to that. And okay, there's points at which I might fall down on that journey, but it's relatively sort of short, sweet, quick. Whereas we know that the process of making a will very often is a bit more of a sort of drawn out process. So making our minds up is just the start. We then have to act. And like I said, I quite like the way that this particular paper sort of divides that up into three stages. So it says we make our minds up, obviously, then we have to sort of start, and that's a challenge and a half in its own right. Then we have to maintain that action, go through several different stages, I suppose, in the case of thinking about making wills, and then of course close it. So I guess in our world, that's probably the point at which we actually, get that will sort of signed and executed. And there's lots of barriers or hiccups or problems that we might encounter during that journey. So even if I've made my mind up, I might just fail to get started. And they said one of the reasons, and I guess it does sound fairly obvious, but it's good to see it supported by academic research. One of the reasons people just fail to get started is because they just forget about it. In one study, I like this, it really stuck in my head. It said that a delay of just 5 seconds between making one's mind up and then, getting on and actually doing something about it, a delay of just 5 seconds meant that 8% of people forgot. And it said those people were, young, healthy, I think probably student volunteers. So this was not, people that had memory issues at all. So even just a 5 second delay and people forget to get going. So again, in our world where it is much more of a drawn out process, you can see how it just might be easy for people to just forget about their original plan. Some things are sort of time bound, so time will move on and we might miss the opportunity. So I guess where you have a sort of month, a make a will month type activity, that would apply to that, wouldn't it? And very often, as human beings, what we do is we choose something that just feels a bit more attractive in the short term. So as I was going to say, me cleaning my grout would be an example of that. I realize cleaning your grout is not always that attractive. Maybe going for a walk or having a bar of chocolate or something like that. But we fixate on something in the short term that just seems a bit more exciting and interesting than the thing we know we should do. So similarly, we can face challenges in that sort of as time goes on in maintaining that behavior. It might be that we just don't monitor our progress, we get distracted, fall into bad habits that we all have. Some of the, cognitive biases that we as human beings are prone to can sort of kick in. And again, we're human, and so we can get in a bad mood, we can get tired and just fail to carry on doing the thing that we know we should do. And then finally, closing it, finishing something off. We very often, again, I know I do this, have too many goals, too many things on, and some things just naturally have to sort of fall beside the wayside. That can be a big problem with actually closing a particular action. And actually, sometimes the converse can happen. There are times in life in general, not probably in will making, but in life in general, when we should just stop and give up. But sometimes we don't. So, lots of sort of barriers and challenges with getting people to move from having that plan, having that idea, and actually doing something about it. And similarly, digging into the procrastination research just for a moment, some people are just natural procrastinators. It's a bit of a character trait. Um, but I thought some of these others were really interesting, again, in the context of gifts and wills specifically. So when we see an event as being further away, the less impact it has on our decisions now. So again, okay, making a will might not be that sort of far away in our minds, but I guess it's to do with our own deaths and our own mortalities, which we like to imagine is a long way out. If we find something a bit sort of aversive, the more likely we are to want to delay it. So again, there are challenges with thinking about our own death and thinking about giving away all of our stuff, which is, what makes us who we are as individuals. Now, that is quite a challenging thing to do psychologically. So the more likely we are, therefore, to want to put it off. I definitely feel seen with this point, the giving tasks to tomorrow selves. That's like, oh my goodness, yes, that's exactly what we do, don't we? We actually kind of go, okay, today I'm a bit tired. I haven't got a lot of energy. But so tomorrow Claire can actually deal with that. But as a good lesson for life in general, it's not always a kindness to tomorrow Claire to pass the work on to her. And then sometimes we can kind of get into this loop where it just makes things worse and worse. So, we're procrastinating and we know we should do something about it, and that makes us feel bad. And because we feel bad, we procrastinate. So, I think, like I said, I think these are really interesting things to think out about, specifically in the context of gifts in wills. But enough of all that. What do we know about what we can do in this space? What can we do to actually help people to take action? Um, what you can see on the screen here is a bit of a model that we developed over at Legacy Futures, looking at the sort of the extended, the fullest version of a journey that someone might go on when they're sort of thinking about gifts in wills. Um, and as part of that process, it was really interesting again to dig into some of this psychological research that gives us some nice sort of concrete actions that we can take in some of these spaces. So I won't dig into the first two because essentially the first one says, this is when someone is not even really thinking about legacies and gifts in wills, which we know a lot of the population are in that space. It's just not on their radar. Then we know that, again, certain things happen in people's lives. So illness, changes in their family circumstances, coming into money, that can really sort of get people moving. And then they move into this sort of deliberation phase, which I will dig into. And they said essentially when you're in this phase, you go through a process first of sort of information search and then evaluation. So, you try and gather information about what it is you're trying to do, whether that's make a will, whether that's buy a new laptop, whether that's buy your next house. And then you gather all that information and you think about it. I guess that's a fairly sort of straightforward process, isn't it? But what's quite interesting is when people are in this sort of phase of thinking about things, there are levers that we can pull to help them or encourage them to move along the journey. So, firstly, we can encourage people to think that this is something that they can do. And then secondly, we can encourage them to think that it's something they want to do. So encourage them to see this as something that's both feasible and desirable. And if we can encourage them to think both of those things, I can do it and I want to do it, that's likely to drive that sense of commitment to a goal, which, as you'll see, it comes back into play later on when it comes to really kind of getting people to take action. So there's things we can do in both of those areas. So things that make people see it as something they can do, and things that make people see it as something that they would want to do. So one of the things you can do, it says, to show people that it's something they can do, is show them that they've done something like this perhaps in the past. So for example, just talking about the gifts that they give in their life, this is just another form of giving, isn't it? And actually, you're a very experienced donor, or most of the people that we would be communicating with would be, experienced charity donors. This is something that you do all the time. You're a lovely, generous, kind individual. And so this is just a way of extending that. So showing people, yep, something you can do already. The other thing we can do is just tell people that they can do it, which sounds fairly obvious, doesn't it? I've got a nice example. I think I'll skip past it so we're not taking up lots of time with video, but this is a nice example from Remember a Charity. I'll pop it in the chat later, so if anyone wants to watch it, they can. But essentially, it's the lovely Janet Ellis answering questions from people that say, I'd like to leave some money to charity. How do I go about doing it? So just telling people that this is really easy. It's a really simple process where you just take the information about the charity that you want to support to your solicitor. So really just showing people that it's an easy thing to do. The other thing we can do then is show people that other people like them do this thing. So a couple of examples here from Marie Curie, just showing again, everyday people who are thinking about will writing and, just showing them that again, it's people like you doing things like this. We know from other research that that's a really powerful thing in the legacy space anyway, but it's also a powerful thing when it comes to encouraging people to take action. So those are some of the things we can do to make people see that you can do it. There's also things that we can do to show people that they want to do it, that it is desirable, that it's something they'd like to do. this is an example from Willpower in Canada. So they're the Canadian equivalent of the Remember a Charity campaign. Um, one of the things that you can do in this space is really show people how a gift in a will or actually getting your will written in the first place is a way of sort of meeting these really fundamental human needs. So again, without going off too much of a tangent, as I am occasionally want to do, what psychological research shows us is there's these really sort of three fundamental human needs that we all share as human beings. So you've got relatedness, autonomy, and competence. And relatedness is that connection to others. Autonomy is the freedom to choose, and competence is our own ability to do something. And I really like how Willpower in Canada have created these little stories which should demonstrate each of those. So, as they see here in the relatedness space, actually writing your will is a really kind thing that you can do for your loved ones. In terms of autonomy, that people's ability to make their own choices. Again, being proactive ensures that you get what you want. If you think about it, a will is an amazing form of autonomy, isn't it? It's allowing you to make choices even when you're no longer here, which is it's an amazing document, really. And then competence, that ability to have an impact, to make a difference. Again, you can see that they talk about a gift that will last the test of time. So, showing people that their actions will have an impact. Okay, so those are some things we can do in that sort of deliberation phase. Once people have sort of made their minds up, or once people have sort of thought about the options, let's express it that way, they make their sort of final decision. And this is actually some research that came from my PhD that really looked at, how are people making that decision? Um, and what I found was that most people, not absolutely all, but most people kind of went through this thought process where their decision was, I want to write a will, I want to give to charity in the broadest sense of the word. And then they really thought about, well, what are the causes that I care about? So I'm a big dog lover, so I might say, I really love dogs. And then they'll think about, well, what's the brand that's got the greatest impact on that cause? So again, for me, if I'm thinking dogs just off the top of my head, I'd probably just think of Dogs Trust, because for me, that's the first brand that comes to mind. So that was the sort of decisional process that people seem to go through. But then, as we've said, they've actually got to go and take action. They've made their mind up. I'm going to go and give all my money to Dogs Trust. Don't tell my daughter. And now I've got to actually do something about it. And that, I think, often, as we looked at on that very first couple of slides, is where things fall down a bit. So, um, however, there is some really helpful research. So, really, if you're me, fascinating research that looks at how can you encourage people to actually take action once they've made their decision. And actually, there's a quite nice sort of simple thing that you can do, which is get people to make a little plan. So get people to think about, when am I going to write my will? Where am I going to write my will? How am I going to write my will? To actually make this concrete plan to do it. And there is, long story short, loads of really good, really robust research that basically says just getting someone to think about that in advance will encourage them to take action. And it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me because I look at, our typical charity legacy packs, for example, and you get all the nice sort of case for support stuff up front, don't you? And then you kind of get to the back, and there's a bit of a planner to actually sort of plan out, this is how much I own, and this is what I want to give, and these are the different people or organizations I want to leave my money to. But I don't think I've seen one that actually gets people to come up with a plan to go and do the thing. So actually, I think that's a really sort of simple tweak that we could make to our communications in order to encourage people to actually take that action. So essentially, those are called implementation intentions. And what the research says is it's much more powerful to have that sort of more concrete, more specific plan than just to have that big goal. So, rather than just having that goal of I want to get my will written or I want to leave money to charity, having that little plan about how you're going to do that thing means they're more likely to actually do it. My little example being rather than just having I will win the race, I will speed up on straight sections of the track. I don't know if that's how you win races, but hey. Then the second thing we can do in that space, they say, is get people to go through again what the academics they love a nice academic term, but they call it mental contrasting. So they say, well, what are the if you get people to think in advance about the obstacles they might encounter and what they're going to do if they occur, then again, if they come up against any of those obstacles, they're much less likely to stop them in their path. So having a kind of if-then plan. So, as someone who was on a constant journey to try and lose weight, for example, I've got a little if-then plan in my head. So, if the waiter asks me what I want, then I will order a salad. And the idea is because I've got the little plan in my head, um, it sort of taps into that, system one, system two thinking that you've probably heard of in the past. The idea that because I've got this little plan in my head, I don't have to think about it in a really conscious way. I don't have to use lots of, expensive brain power to do it. I've just got this little if-then plan. So that will help me sort of take action. And finally, at this point, when someone has actually made their mind up, they said they'll really concentrate in on information that helps them achieve their goals, and they'll avoid information that might be distracting. So at this point, if you know someone has kind of made up their mind to put you in a gift to you in their will, then actually, lots of extra information about what a lovely organization you are is might actually be a bit distracting. And what they actually need is that sort of concrete information about the will writing or legacy giving process. And so I come back to willpower again, just to give you an example, because we talked to them a little bit about the if-then plans, and they had this lovely idea of putting if-then plans at the bottom of their legacy brochure, the various pages on their brochures. So I've just sort of copy and pasted a few of those here, so you've got, if I'm having a hard time starting my will, I will do this. If I'm having a hard time choosing a guardian for my kids, I will do this. That's often one that people mention, helps makes them get a bit stuck. If I'm having a hard time choosing a charity, I will do this, this, and this. So just a really simple way of adding those sort of if-then plans into a piece of communication. Okay, and then people get to the action phase. They actually, they've made a plan to make a plan. They actually go and do something about it. And the reason for showing you, I suppose, that feasibility, desirability stuff earlier is because actually what the research says is the more feasible and desirable people found things in the first place, the more effort they're going to put in when it gets to this point. So if we've done a good job earlier on at making people feel like this is something I can do and this is something that I want to do, then when it gets to this point, or when they find themselves up against different challenges, etc., the more feasible and desirable, the more likely they are to sort of try and overcome those challenges. The other really kind of interesting little nugget that came out of the research as well, though, is in the action phase. Um, People often don't necessarily have the sort of the tools, I suppose, to be able to kind of monitor their progress. And actually, again, what the research says is if you can give them ways of monitoring their progress, again, they're much more likely to carry on with the action. So the research looked at things like, again, go back to people being on a diet or trying to do more exercise. If you encourage people to fill in a diary, for example, during that process, again, they're much more likely to carry on with what it was that they were trying to achieve. And it reminded me of, I suppose you see it in real life quite a bit, don't you? With things like, if you fill in a survey, something like that online, and you've got that little bar going across the top, which is showing you how far you've got and how much further you've got to go. I thought, well, that's another sort of nice real world way of sort of showing people how they're progressing. So I haven't got an example of a charity kind of actually doing that in the wills and legacy space, but it did occur to me that actually, again, some sort of progress tracker could again be a nice little tool that would help people to keep moving forwards with their planning. Okay, so um, that's a bit of a run through. As I said, there's some of those findings from research that I think could be really quite interesting in that phase between people inquiring or considering, or even saying, they're intenders and sort of taking action. And as we said at the beginning, there is sectorally, there is a big gap there between the 35-40% of people that say they would that at least think about this, and the relatively small but very generous 6% of people who actually do. And I do think there's a brilliant opportunity for us all as charities in this space to, I suppose it's easy in inverted commas, an easy win for us to just encourage more of those people that, initially express interest in this to move along the journey. And, that's good for everybody, isn't it? Everybody wants to have an up-to-date plan that reflects how they feel in the now, remembers the loved ones they want to remember and includes the charities they want to include. So I think if we can just give people the sort of the tools and the information they need to move through the journey, then everybody's a winner, really. So on that note, I think as hopefully everybody is familiar with, we're going to go off in a moment. I'll leave this screen up in case anyone wants to take a quick screenshot or similar. But we were going to get you to bounce off into your breakout groups for sort of probably 7 or 8 minutes in a minute. Get you to think about one key takeaway from all of this lovely academic research, one key takeaway that you could actually implement in your organization. And I thought, well, gosh, I can't do a whole session talking about the importance of implementations, intentions, etc., and not have the second bit of the sentence, which is the when, where, and how you'll actually go about implementing it. So, what are you going to do? And then, what is your implementation intention for actually implementing it? And the theory would suggest that if you've thought about that, then actually you'll be more likely to do it.
So, um, shall we go around the rooms and see if we can get some feedback on what was discussed? So I've got a list of who was in each room. So if we start with room one, so we've got Hannah, we had Hannah, Mike, Phil, Sarah, and Trudy in room one. So
I don't mind feeding back, but if anyone from our group wants to chip in if I've forgotten something. So we had a mix of people that had been doing legacies for a while and some that were a bit earlier on in their legacy journeys. So I think the things that stuck out for us were the potential planning tool that you might be able to provide for people. Also reiterating how easy it is to make a will.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about that for a while. We talked about how having a will month can be helpful, that you can, highlight wills for that particular month, but also making sure that you don't forget about it for the other months when someone might be considering or kind of on their little journey that we were discussing earlier. So I think that was the main points.
Brilliant points.
Thank you, Hannah. So for room two, we had Emily, Katie, Kim, Maddie, and Nicola. Would anybody like to volunteer?
I don't mind if anyone wants to chip in.
Thank you, Katie.
I think we all were quite interested in the idea of the if-then plans. And we thought that was a really useful way of looking at getting people to actually motivate themselves to move to the next level. We talked about having checklists and guidance on the website and in legacy guides. And we talked about the idea of having holding events where potential legacy donors or current legacy donors might want to meet with solicitors to find out more about how to do their wills. I think that there was something else as well that I didn't write down. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Thank you, Katie. So for room three, we had Alice. I think Melissa just sent a message. She just had to leave. Oliver and V. So would anybody like to feedback?
Well, I probably shouldn't be the one to do all the talking, but we were having a chat about feasibility, desirability, and getting people to not only realize they can do it, but it's actually just a really lovely way to remember and be remembered. And I came in halfway through the chat, so I was mainly just being gushing about Claire and saying how many ideas we've got to take away, not charity related.
Thanks. Okay, so for room 4, we had Alex, Claire, Sophie and Tony. So Alex, Sophie and Tony. Does anybody want to feedback from room 4?
I don't mind doing it.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Although we did spend a bit of time thanking Claire for such an inspirational way of thinking about things, because it really has sort of galvanized me to understand, we've got all this in place, but these are the ways that we could actually get people to sign up. So it has been really useful. I've said something along the lines of we want to look at creating a sort of a myth busting page to get people to understand and break down what the blockers might be to actually stopping that procrastination and making an action. And Claire very helpfully suggested that could be an opportunity for the if and then tactic to be brought into play. So if you're worried about such and such, then this is how you could deal with it. Does that sum everything up, Claire? Was there more?
Yeah. I think you also mentioned just the amazing feeling you get when a will is done, and didn't you, Alex? Which I think is
yes. Finally made my will
great.
last week, thanks to Make a Will Online. And I did say there was a physical feeling of relief when I had actually done it after so many years of thinking about it. So yes, so maybe that's something to play on in the future.
Yeah. Taps into that desirability bit, doesn't it? So
yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And the last group was Emma, Tracy and Tracy. So Tracy from Combat Strass and Tracy from St Luke's. Does anybody want to feedback from the last group? Are they away from keyboard?
Sorry, no, I was trying
to
unmute, but unsuccessfully. I'm happy to, although I'm not sure how well I know down what we talked about. I think it was more to do with the planning tool and the feasibility, and particularly for me, it was the feasibility was a strong idea of trying to influence people before they're sort of starting too far on the journey. The others already had some sort of planning tool, I believe, that they have for supporters, although we don't particularly. So, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So, Claire, is it just questions now?
Yep, I think we've.
Yeah. So, has anybody got any further
yeah.
questions for Claire? Just looking in the chat.
I have a question for the room, if everybody would indulge me. I always find it easier if we can start up. I want to do a quick straw poll. Can everybody start with a hand up, and then we can see which hands go down? I find that easier than doing it the other way around. Either by doing the hand up thing, where everyone's got their hand up, apart from Mike. Oh yeah, good one. Okay, super, thank you. So, who is going to leave your hand up if what you've learned today has given you an idea that you're going to take away from the session? Leave your hand up if you've got an idea that you are going to take away and implement. Okay, great. So it's about 80%. Fantastic. With that idea, if anybody, we've got Claire for another few minutes. If anybody, you can take your hands down now. If anyone's got a question about the intent or how to drive the change in the behavior of your supporters, ask it now. We've got a wonderful resource and something to make the most of. Great, Alex.
Unmute. I would be interested to know Claire's views on how much of a driver the desire as a charity for us to keep in touch with the legator is, and whether in your experience people actually respond to the idea of events for legators as a wildlife trust, we can take people for a lovely walk to the reserve to see
Nice.
how their gift in their will could make a difference. Do you think that is something that we could offer and would have
Mm,
impact for them?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, it's a big broad brush question, isn't it? Because if you ask some people, they will generally say, no, I don't want any extra communication. Leave me to it, and that's fine.
Mhm.
There is some research that says what do legacy supporters want, and the key thing that comes out of that is it said that people like communication once or twice a year from a knowledgeable person at the charity that can update them on how things are going was essentially what people said. And then they said, what do people not like? And what they don't like is communication that essentially just feels too mass market and makes them just feel like, a number on a database somewhere. And so when
Mhm.
we do research for clients, actually, we see a really similar pattern that people tell us. So actually, one of the ways, jumping for a moment, one of the ways we do it is because if you just say to people, what do you want? It's really hard because generally people will be very British and go, no, I don't want anything. It's fine. So often we have to try and ask the question in a slightly different way, just to try and go a little bit deeper with people, actually. So often we ask people, tell me about a really great experience that you've had, say either with a commercial company or a charity. And we get them to explore, really good experiences. And the one that always sticks in my head as an example of this is a lady said she went to she said 5 years ago, I went to Cafe Nero, and as I approached the counter, the barista said, I know you, I know what you want. And he knew her coffee order. And that's just that really simple thing about sort of recognizing her and knowing what she wanted has stuck in her head for 5 years. So that kind of, I think it kind of speaks to the same thing, that people want to be sort of seen and recognized as individuals, and just don't want to feel like they're just this, you know, number 41782 on your database. So I think events actually are really nice in that space. Generally, because actually events have this really lovely combination of making people feel like important individuals, but also making people feel like they're part of a community. And we know from loads of other research that actually that's quite important in the sort of end of life, um, thinking about how you're going to kind of live on space. People want to feel like they are valued as people, but they also want to feel like they're part of a community of like-minded people. Kind of want both of those things to happen. And so I really like events because actually it does the two. It it basically, it's nice to be invited and you get an invite and you feel special, but then you also get to be part of this community of supporters. So the kind of thing you were talking about there, Alex, which and it also feels really like lovely and personal. If it's not too massive a group and like say going on a walk and you're getting to see things that you might not otherwise see, I think that sounds perfect. That was a really long-winded way of saying, yeah, great idea.
Lovely. Thank you. That's really useful. Thank you.
We've got something in the chat actually. Hang on one sec. So, Hannah, if you have limited capacity with events, etc., would you prioritise? I can't even see that because it's something's in the way.
Oh,
My
I can
screen.
see. I
Can you
think, would
see
you
it?
prioritise warm supporters or inquirers over pledges? I mean, personally, what I'd try and do is mix them up, actually, because again, we know from research that social influence is really important in the legacy space. I mean, it's really important in all fundraising. It's why you go to Just Giving and you see that you're sponsoring someone and you see that all the people before you are giving £20, so you give £20. It's really important in fundraising, but for weird and wonderful psychological reasons, it's even more important in a situation which has sort of some relatedness to death, basically. So that social influence piece is really important. So I think if I was doing events, I would try and mix my sort of pledges, warm supporters, inquirers up a bit so that people get to meet other people like them that have already done this thing. So it's a lovely experience for the pledges, of course, and that's really important. But also then it's sort of a little bit of social influence as well, in a very gentle way, just meeting people like me that have done this thing. Oh, marvelous.
Thanks.
Anybody got any more questions? I just think it was really good, Claire, because obviously we know that around about 10% of people leave charitable gifts, but research says round about maybe 50 potentially percentage of people want to do it. So there's like a huge disparity there of people that obviously want to do it, but just don't get round to actually doing it. So imagine you could even just help another 10%.
Yeah. Well, we put so much effort, don't we, again, as sort of charities and fundraisers into sort of reaching out into colder audiences and trying to encourage people that have never thought about it at all to think about it. And actually probably the quicker win for lots of us is actually, can we take more of those people that either have already done it and retain more of them, because we know we lose a lot of people, but also, take more of those people that have expressed an interest and move them through the process gently, as I said, very gently, and in a way that ultimately is about meeting their needs as well as obviously being good for our organisations. So yeah, I see it. I think it's a really big opportunity, actually, and probably something that collectively as a sector we could focus more on, I think.
Definitely. Okay. Oliver, were you about to say something?
I was just going to wind up and say a really, really big thank you to Dr. Clare Routley for sharing her expertise with the Legacy Loop community. It's been brilliant. My brain's fizzing, and I will rewatch this one. I don't always, but thank you very much indeed. And I think just a closing from Marie on the next one, and a reminder to keep the date free.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully you found that useful. Just a reminder, if you need any help or assistance in any way, then just reach out to us, especially around if you've got new staff joining or you're thinking about doing internal engagement, we can always help with that. Or if you want to book in for quarterly catch-ups. I put the registration link for the next one. It's the 26th of November. So hopefully you can make that one, but I'll be sending through the invites each week. I'll send through the resources once these are ready, which will probably be next week. But thank you for joining us, and thank you again, Clare.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.